So, how to care for a hardy chrysanthemum? Well, it's fall, and that means mums. And in front of me I have all the different sizes of mums we grow. We grow them as small as a little 4-inch mum, a little 6-inch mum. All three of these are 8-inch pan mums, which we call mighty mums. And then we grow great big ones in 12-inch pots, and we call those super mums. How do you use a hardy chrysanthemum? Well, you can either plant them in the ground and have them bloom this fall, and then they freeze back over the winter and come back up next spring, and then live all the way through summer, and then hopefully, if everything goes well, bloom again next fall. So they are perennial. If you want a hardy mum to come back for you next year, you really need to plant it in September or early October and get it in the ground and actively establishing a root system before it freezes. If you use them as a fall decoration and then let them freeze and then try to plant them, it's not very likely that you'll get them to come back. So plant them early if you want them to, if you're truly using them as a hardy chrysanthemum. The other way to use a hardy chrysanthemum is just as a fall decoration, which would be to just keep it in its pot and put it in a container on your front porch and enjoy it all the way to Halloween usually, and then at that point you just discard them and just use them for their color in the fall. So how do you care for mums? Well, we water our mums every single day, and on really hot sunny days sometimes we'll water twice a day. So that means when you take it home, you need to water every single day and sometimes twice a day. They take a lot of water. One thing you can do to really help, especially if you're using them as a decoration and they're in a container, is to use a saucer. You put a saucer underneath them to hold water, you get that much more carrying capacity. Plus it holds water up into the column of soil into the plant, and everybody will be happier. Mums just take a lot of water, and saucers can really help on survivability. People often ask about fertilizing mums. You fertilize mums up until the point when they start to open, like this one, maybe even a little sooner than that on this, and then you stop fertilizing and you just water with clear water while they're blooming, because you really don't want any more growth on the mum. You're just wanting to see the flowers, and all of that energy is already in place, so you just water with clear water and let the mum develop. Now, how to choose a Westwood grown mum? Well, it kind of depends on where you're putting it and how you're using it. If you're going to use it on your porch and your porch is shady, you would be wise to pick a mum that's fairly open. This one is basically all the way open. In shade, mums, if they get into too dark of a shade, they won't open all the way up. So you need to choose one that's fairly open to get it to do the right thing in the shade. Because this one will just continue to just sit here like this. So if your porch isn't in the shade, or you're all the way out into full sun, you would be wise to choose one of these that are not as open, because they've just got more time before they go over the hill. This mum in front of me, this purple one, is pretty much what I would call a perfectly timed mum. You've got some blooms already open, so you get a real good idea of what the color of it is, and then you've got a lot of semi-open buds, and you've got a lot of tight buds. So that mum will have a lot of color on it for the most amount of time that you can have on a mum. If you're out in full sun, you can also just choose a mum that's really tight, like this one. This one's called cracking, where the buds are just beginning to crack open and show just a tiny amount of color. And that mum will last for a really long time in the garden. And what you might also consider doing if you're doing several mums in a display is buy a few cracking mums and a few half open and a couple of all the way open mums, and then that staggers your color display all the way through the season. One of the most important things to remember when buying a mum is to wait for fall. The big box stores typically bring mums in August, and they'll have them in bloom, and what they've done is they've black clothed the crop, which makes them bloom earlier, but mums don't last as well in the heat. So you buy a mum there in August, it's in bloom, everybody's excited, oh here comes fall, but in the heat it might last 7 to 10 days before it's all the way through its bloom. So you need to buy a mum in fall that is coming into bloom in the natural light cycle. They last a whole lot longer. The temperatures are cooler, which also helps with how long they last. Don't buy a mum from a big box ever, but especially not in August. Now, one of the big questions that I often get is how long will a mum last? Well, if you get one that's just cracking open, you can probably expect 4 to 5 weeks of color. This mum right here is maybe a week behind, so 3 to 4 weeks, and an all the way open mum 2 to 3 weeks, just depending on how long it's been open. So they're not incredibly long on their bloom time, but they sure are rewarding. They just cover themselves with blooms and are all in these fall colors that are very festive. So they're a pretty rewarding plant. For fall displays, probably the best mum to use are one of these big super mums. Mostly because it's such a huge show of color, but also because it's in that bigger pot, it's got a bigger soil volume, and if you'll put a saucer under it, it'll go longer between waterings, and it'll do better just setting on a front porch. You just almost can't go wrong with one of these giant super mums. So no matter which size you pick, whether it's the little 4-inch mums, mighty mums, or super mums, or how open you pick them, you just really can't go wrong with fall mums, the quintessential fall plant. Good luck in the garden.